In this setup session, we'll explain the process of designing the layouts for receipts and labels that you print on the store's receipt and label printers. The layouts are designed using the same form we used for form customization, with some additional features and limitations. If you haven't watched the lesson on the Form Designer, you should watch it now before proceeding with this lesson. Let's take a look at the point of sale receipt to get us started. Unlike form layouts, receipt layouts do not use the standard header sections. Instead, you add other data sections which are printed sequentially. Most receipts will use data grid sections and line item sections. Let's walk through the default point of sale receipt. We start with a data grid, which allows us to lay out data on the receipt in a series of rows and columns. When using a data grid, we suggest that you set the column count to 14. This is because the standard receipt printers can print 42 or 56 characters across. Setting the column count to 14 lets the layout scale easily to either character count option. We called this our receipt header and gave it 3 rows of data. We start with an image in the first row. Because the fonts available on a standard receipt printer are limited, using images rather than text gives you more flexibility in the appearance of the text. In this case, we created an image with our store name and assigned it to the top image file path in the receipt definition. To add this image, we selected it from the Form Components list. When using images, the printed size of the image is based on the number of columns assigned to the image element. In this case, we set the columns to 8, which causes the image to be a little bigger than half of the receipt, that is 8/14. Because the grid is 14 columns wide, we started the title in column 4, giving it 3 columns of padding on either side. Next, we added the sale date from the Data Fields folder. We put this in row 2 of the first section. Because it's the only value on the second line, we set the element to take up all 14 columns in the grid and set the alignment to center. We also changed the font to small, so it appears in the smaller font, 56 characters per line. We could have also chosen the normal font, which is 42 characters per line, or the wide version of either of those two. Next, we added a dash dividing line to finish the top section. We added this as a static label by clicking the Add Label button in the section editor, then typing a series of dashes as the label text. We also set this element to 14 characters wide and centered it. Now we are ready to examine the section that will print out all the line items. Because a sale can contain multiple items, we added a special line items section to the layout. With these sections, we enter the values that we want to print for each item. Then when the receipt is printed, the system creates a line for each item purchased. We've included the product's receipt description as the first data on the row, 9 columns wide, starting in column 1. Next, we add the quantity field, 2 columns wide, starting in column 10. To finish the row, we add the product unit price field, 3 columns wide, starting in column 12. Now we add another data grid for the receipt footer. We made this section 8 rows high and 14 columns wide. We start with a dashed line, like the one we finished the header section with, to denote the end of the individual line items. Next, we added the labels for sales subtotal, tax, and total price. These are each 7 columns wide, starting in column 1. Then we added the 3 values that go with the 3 labels by picking the fields from the Data Fields list. To finish off the receipt, we added the sales associate's first name and a label to go with it. Then at the bottom, we added the bottom image in the same way that we created the top image. The data fields that you have available for the receipt depend on some values you assigned when defining the receipt. Let's take a look at this receipt definition. See that the base table for the receipt is the point of sales table. This table includes all the information we used in the top and bottom sections of the receipt. The data fields layout we selected was configured to include sale data from this base table, as well as line item data for the sale. Watch the Tech Talk on data layouts for more information on how these layouts are constructed. Here's a sample receipt created with this layout. We see the image at the top, followed by the sale date and time. Then we see the individual line items from the sale, bounded by our dashed line borders. Then we see the sale totals, followed by the sales associate's name, and finished off with the bottom image. If you decide to change the default receipt, we suggest that you open that receipt in your Form Designer, then click Save As to create a copy of the receipt to work on. Make your changes to the copy and save it. Next, go to the Label and Receipt Definition form and link the new layout to the receipt. you may have to experiment a bit to get the layout that perfectly fits your needs. Labels are designed in the same manner as receipts. The main difference is that you can select the font and font size for each element based on the fonts that are available on the label printer you are using. This allows you to print out a value as a barcode if that's what's needed.